Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this morning's webinar, The Future of the Office, which I think is going to be a fascinating conversation, and we're joined by some great speakers. So I think we've got some great content for the next hour and a half that I think you'll enjoy very much. Peldon Rose this year published a report in October entitled The Future of the Office, or the Office of the Future, which has been a consistent topic of discussion, I think, for the last 7 months. Back in the summer, I think a lot of people spoke about the death of the office and what's going to happen because a very small percentage of people would return to work in offices. Then we kind of got everyone talking about offices becoming 2 to 3 day centers of collaboration. But as time's progressed, I think people believe that offices will return to almost a sense of normality. But is that the case? We will discuss that. And I think looking at the evidence, particularly from the research of this report, there's some really interesting points it throws up about how people, different perceptions of the office and just how things may change. So we're delighted first to welcome a gentleman called Leeson Medhurst, who is Head of Strategy, Workplace Strategy for Peldon Rose, who will come and interview and talk about that report in a few minutes. We're also delighted to welcome Cemel Ezel, the founder of Change Please, who will also be interviewing as well. For many will know Change Please, but for those who don't, it has probably been regarded as one of the leading social enterprises in the country. In 2019, it won the Queen's Excellence Award for Social Mobility. In 2018, it was regarded the world's best social enterprise, and also won the Richard Branson 2018 Startup of the Year. And in 2017 was regarded as one of the Social Entrepreneur of the Year. So no pressure there, Cemel, as we come and talk, but I'm sure your views will be fascinating because I think many want to see greater commitment to sustainability. And then we've also got Anthony Grumbridge, Director of Liquid Line, coming to talk. I think everyone agrees that coffee is probably one of the most crucial things in the working day in offices. And what's his perceptions and what his views as well. So a lot to get through, and we've got some really fascinating discussions to go through. But first, we'd just like to run a few polling questions, if that's okay. So may I introduce Lauren to come to the forward just to ask those questions.
Hi, thank you, Chris. Welcome, everybody. Absolutely. Just to sort of set the tone for our discussion this morning, I'd love to know, I mean, we believe that offices will return, but when do you think that this is likely to happen? Do you think it's in Q1 2021, Q2, Q3, or do you think that it's possibly going to be a bit later than that? Interesting. So majority feel that we're looking at Q2 in 2021, which is very interesting indeed. Next quick question. When offices return, do you think they will have changed? And this is something obviously forms part of our conversation. And I'm very glad to see that almost all of us agree that they will have changed by the time we all get back. And last quick question is, do you think that sustainability and innovation will be of utmost importance in the office of the future? Okay, so quite a resounding yes on that one. Should set the tone for our discussion. Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, that's great. Leeson, can I ask you to come and join us, please? On screen. Thank you, well, good morning, welcome.
Morning, Chris.
Just to introduce Leeson again. He is Head of Workplace Strategy for Peldon Rose. He has 17 years experience in understanding the influence of environmental and human behavior. So I think this will be a fascinating discussion, talking through the results of your report. An expert in employee productivity, which is obviously one of the major issues that's been discussed over the last couple of years. An international speaker and presenter, and loves cycling. We've been talking about this, used to do cycling competitively, and also has a Cocker Spaniel, which I gather you have a great passion for and training.
I do indeed, yeah. He's locked away, so he doesn't disturb us this morning, Chris.
Well, let's look, welcome very much. I'm delighted to thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We got a lot to cover, I know, but let's start with that open question. I mean, we saw that the majority of people, obviously, a huge majority of people, believe the office is going to change. How do you think offices are going to be post this period?
Well, Chris, that is the $1 million question, and thank you for starting with that. I mean, this could be a half an hour conversation in its own right with this this one single question, but I won't bore you or the audience with the rhetoric that I could spiel over. But I think let's start with in fact that question that Lauren posed, and the question was quite interesting. Do we think offices will change? Well, offices won't change necessarily, but our expectations of behaviour will have changed as a result of the pandemic. I think let's take a step back. I think we should probably address the elephant in the room and talk about the no office, because the concept of no office does exist. And there will be people, of course, that are watching this webinar, either live or in fact on demand, that will have successfully worked at home over the past 9-10 months and have been performing very well. They would have enjoyed it, and there will be many business leaders across the UK and across the world, in fact across the globe, that will be saying, well, why in fact do we need an office? Because there perhaps is a case not to have one. And there is a lot of chat. There's a lot of chat on all sorts of social media platforms, in the press, that's talking about the no office. And there are people within our industry, my industry in particular, that are now saying that you should have an office. There very much is a dictatorship, or a dictation, sorry, that we should, you need an office. I think what we need to address really is the benefits of actually having an office, and what I'd like to talk about today is the fact, how we can convince and convey to clients not the need for an office, but why they should want an office. Because it is my belief that the value of having a space that we call the home or the office far outweigh the benefits of not actually having a physical workplace. And I know that we're going to be talking about this over the period of the next sort of 25-30 minutes. But for me, the landscape of the space will change in time. I think we need to obviously accept that we are governed by real estate law. And when a lease event occurs, that is the opportunity that business leaders will have to make a change if they indeed want to. And only that point, really, because up until that point, the design of that space is almost fixed in time. But our behaviour contract has changed, and we can talk about that in a few minutes. But the office landscape will be really dictated around experience and choice, are the two key words that I think I would like to use moving forward. And on those two words alone, if you think about everything that we do, in fact, let me paraphrase. There's a fellow that I always use when I meet clients, and his name is William Denning. He's an American engineer and an author, and he famously said, without data, we are nothing but people with opinions, which is so true. And we need data to inform our decisions, to inform our choices, and we crave experiences, and those experiences define us as human beings, and they create our own experience. And this is what we're craving for now, is we're looking for spaces that are going to give us the choice and experience. All the learnings for the past 10 months, where we've actually been working remotely and working from home, we're going to be looking to replicate that somehow in our forward working careers, in our forward working lives, and the office landscape will need to be tailored so it offers an element of choice, flexibility, and freedom as well.
It is interesting, isn't it? The view, I mean, one of the things reading your report, there's about 3 questions in one from what you're saying, is I think there's a split between how directors and business managers are looking at offices and how employees are looking at offices. And that's one thing I really wanted to talk through, because if we go back pre-COVID, the issue was people saw offices as quite sterile working places. And I think the view is they want to see better purpose within offices. Which ties in, I think, with the sustainability piece. But I noticed the report notes that 84% of leaders believe that offices instilled a sense of purpose, and many felt that this had been lost, or they felt it still a purpose, but employees don't think that purpose existed. They just felt they were there to sit at their desk, and that actually didn't have purpose. And that, to me, says there's a massive chasm in the first place, which is where part of this problem comes from. Is that fair?
Yeah. No, you're right, Chris. I think, and I'm going to talk in a post-pandemic environment for a moment. So of course, as you in your preamble, you talked about I've been doing this for some time now, and I was on this bandwagon talking about empowering a choice and allowing employees to be more nomadic and more agile. But of course, there was I'm going to use the word carefully, but trust. There was this chasm, to use your language, of trust, and people didn't know how to manage remotely. And because there was no way of proving that this could work. In fact, if I roll back 12 months, I was sat in front of a CEO of a major corporation, and I was talking to him about the fact that if we embraced an agile environment and allowed people more choice, then you would have a better engagement with your staff, your employees, and as a net result, performance would increase. And he looked at me and he said, "Leeson, prove it." And I said, "Well, you have to take this leap of faith. You genuinely have to take a leap of faith." But of course, if I fast forward 12 months now, we now have that proof. It does actually work. But before COVID, Chris, you're right. I mean, I think the purpose of the space was that we mandated employees to come to the environment. It was ingrained in our water system. Your contract of employment would normally state that your place of work was the office, and it was your go-to destination. So of course we did it. We put strain on infrastructure. We put strain on ourselves. We tailored our working day around the fact that it started at 8:30, 9 o'clock, finished at 5:36, and that's what we did. We were lemmings. And it's exactly what we did, and we just went to the space because it's what we did. And nobody really challenged that, and offices did become just these homogenized boxes. I mean, yes, they're very well designed, and of course they are important, but we'll talk about this in a minute in terms of what the purpose of the space is. But you're right. I think it's not necessarily the space that lost its purpose, but we were just on this bandwagon and just doing what we did. What's now happened is that the pandemic has now proven, and we all want proof, and we want this evidence, as I talked about. The data now has proven that we can work successfully from different locations. And I believe, in referring back to the first question, I think what will now happen is that employee contracts will change slightly, ever so slightly. And in a pre-pandemic environment, I used to talk about the first, second, and third space. Now, the first space would always be your place of work. So when we think of work, the first space being the office environment, the destination, the place. The second space would normally be your client or a coffee shop, so just away from the office. And the third space would be your home environment. I believe moving forward that the first and third will now swap, and the first space will become home by default. And the third space will become the go-to place, not the go-to place, sorry, the destination space for a reason. And the purpose around the place now will be for a reason. So it's a purposeful place. We go there to do something very specific. And I know you're going to probably ask me that in a few minutes as to what that is.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to your bit about experience, doesn't it? Because actually people do want an experience now. If they're going to come to the office, that it has to add value. And before, you're right, everyone did it as a matter of routine. It's how we all grew up, isn't it? You go to the office 9 to 5 and off you go again. But now that's changed. And actually the trust probably hopefully will come back in. But now when you come to the office, it's going to have to be an experience. Because that's actually, that experience has become the expectation, hasn't it?
100%, 100%, Chris. I think if we role play for a moment, think about a cold winter's Monday morning. It's raining outside. We've got a 10-minute walk to the station to come into town, or wherever your place of work is, and you think, I'm given with a choice. I can either roll out of bed and walk downstairs and turn on my laptop when I'm at work, or I can battle through the climate outside and the cold weather to get on a train with my fellow commuters and go to the space. Now, why would I do that, given the choice? Well, there's got to be a reason for it, and there's got to be an allure. And as professionals within the workplace arena, it is down to us now to create that allure. And I think workplaces will become almost the new high street. And if you think about the experience that we crave when we're going into the high street, we make our choices based on previous experiences, and we choose a destination shop, a brand, whatever it may be, based on the experience we get when we walk into that space, the quality of the product, and the merchandise that we're buying. And that's going to be no different in terms of the workplace, and attracting that future talent as well, that we are going to be looking for that allure, that why, what's in it for me? Why should I come to the space? And that's the way that we have now, the behavioral contract with the workplace that we've experienced. Given that choice, we can stay at home or we come to the place, but there's got to be a reason to go there.
That's interesting. So the question here, the $6 million question the other way around here is, have we learned the lessons? Have companies learned the lessons from this period of time?
Yes, Chris. I think well, so I'm going to go back, and I'm going to again kick the elephant in the room. There is still a trust issue. Coming into the pandemic, there were lots of people that perhaps didn't trust it would work, would perceive that working from home was in fact shirking from home, and of course out of sight, out of mind. And how do we monitor performance and the actual output of employees? And I think that defines where we need to change. And our learnings are now is it's based on output, not on presenteeism. And that's been a topic of discussion for many years. That's not new. But of course, what's the last 10 months has proven and has shown us is that we can actually monitor performance by output. You don't have to be present. So there is going to be an element of the C-suite, of the management, that perhaps we'll still need to go through the learnings of trust, and learn and to be taught how to manage a disparate team. That doesn't come naturally. A lot of us in our aging years, and I put myself into that category, we of course have worked in a certain way, and it's going to take time for us to learn new ways of working. And of course, that new way of working will be to how do we manage disparate teams, and how do we manage our teams via technology, via the different mediums that are available, Slack, Teams, we're using Zoom as a platform now. How do we use them, and how do we manage our team? And that's again a gap in skills that we need to overcome to make sure that people understand A, how to use that technology, but B, how to use it effectively, that we can manage the performance of our team and we're getting the best out of our team as well.
Now, your report says 66% of obviously business leaders and the people who obviously responded said that company culture plays a key role in retaining and attracting talent, which I think most people would agree on. That research has been around for years and years and years. But it's something that's been discussed for years, isn't it? That actually people haven't focused enough on culture. So do we think that actually that this is going to be part of that piece of rebuilding trust? People are going to yet again start investing back into culture and rebuilding that piece of value propositions? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I think you're right. Culture is again another topic we've talked about for years. Again, we're not. This is not groundbreaking here. But what is culture, and what does culture mean to you? What does culture mean to somebody else? And what is culture? You can't buy it. It is something that is created through the people that you employ. The office is, and if we just talk about the workplace for a minute, the office, the workplace, whatever we want to call it, that fixed place, it is an asset. But it is only a facilitator. It is a part of the process. It is part of that culture. It is an important part, and it is an enabler, a facilitator to that business as an organization. But culture is all about your people, and it's about having the right people on the bus, and to make sure that people are buying into the vision of the organization, the vision of the business, and you have a collective agreement and a collective belief. And that's not something that you can buy. It is not something that you earn. It is something that is inbuilt through good leadership, through good style, and genuine joined up beliefs as well. And with the best laid plans that you have, you can have the best strategy, but if you don't have the right culture, it will never work. And I can't remember who said it first, but paraphrasing that good old adage that culture will eat strategy for breakfast is genuinely true. If you don't have the right culture, then your strategy, your best laid plans will just be burnt out. So it doesn't exist. But the office does play an important part in that, and with the right design. And I'm in the middle of a piece of work now with a client in London, who we're talking about culture, and we are talking about how the office plays an important part of it. And there is a resounding belief that with the right style and the right design, it does encourage the right behaviors and the right belief, and it is an enabling asset to enforce and enhance the culture of that organization. But I think, I would say, sorry, Chris, I can see you want to say something there. But I would say that culture is something that is a belief, and it's in your ecosystem as an organization that is driven from the owners of the business, the directors of the business, the individuals, and there's got to be a shared belief there that people buy into.
But if you go back to how the office can support it, what do you think is really important from the conversation you're having with the client, without giving anything away? What kind of things are really important to be able to support that process?
It's the flexibility, Chris. I think in terms of so there's, I think with a lot of organizations, every organization is a sales organization. They have a product to sell, and you have an outward facing culture, and you have an inward facing culture. And it is, for me, if we were to my 30-second elevator pitch on culture, is to make sure those two are aligned. And if I take this client in particular, they very much have an outward facing culture, an outward facing sales position that says one message, but their inward facing message is very different. So the place needs to represent all of those touch points, must be aligned, is what I'm trying to say. So the space has to offer the same flexibility, the same messaging that we are purveying and positioning externally as well as internally as well.
I suppose it's a science, isn't it? How you design things is a science to support this process, is it? And actually, we're learning that science over the years. Is that fair?
I'm not going to claim a PhD here, Chris, but
shame.
What I would say, yes, there is a method to the madness. It is unpeeling the layers of the onion to understand what is important to the client and aspirationally where they're looking to go to. And yeah, there is an element of science to it. You're right. It is. I would always ask clients three or four questions, where they are, where they want to be, where their competition are, and where they'll think they end up as well. So those four questions, you focus on those questions, focus on those questions individually, and you start to extract all of the information you need to then create the brief or create the design. And I go back to that William Denning quote. I'm in the arena for gathering data, and the data informs the brief. And without that brief and without that data, we're guessing to a certain extent. And that is my remit. Is I'm your, I suppose, don't know if I want to say data analyst, but it is my role to find out the what, the why, the where, and the how of every organization to make sure that their space works for them, to get the best out of their employees, the best out of their real estate, so that we can work into the future and beyond.
Now, moving on, because it ties into this, is this research came out of America that the decline in face-to-face contact in the office led to a decline in productivity. And it's interesting that your report notes that 48% of leaders note that employee motivation has been the biggest challenge during lockdown, which I think is probably understandable, the challenges going on. But isn't it also how we can actually recreate face-to-face contact and put relationships back at the core of offices? That brings the experience.
Yeah, exactly, Chris. Yeah, I think one of the things we craved. I mean, I know we can almost smile about it now, but in the height of lockdown, I used to look forward to going to the supermarket, which is a crazy thing to say in any walk of life normally. That 1 hour of freedom I would get, either an exercise or going to the supermarket once a week, was really exciting because I could actually interact or see other people. Albeit I couldn't stand anywhere near them and talk to them from afar, but it was that social interaction. It was that interaction. And if you look at Maslow's law of hierarchy, right in the center there, and I'm not here to start to preach about Maslow, but if you look at that, you can see that we do crave interaction. We need to have those social cues. So motivation during the height of the pandemic was low, and it was declining for that very reason, is that people were stuck at home, caught up in their own four walls, going stir crazy. So they were looking for those interactions, and we do need to recreate those. And this is why the office will become a social experience, and we will go there to have those interactions, those collaborations, and to catch up with you, Chris, to catch up with Anthony and Lauren and Cemel, etc., because we want to. We miss that chat, we miss that interaction, that face-to-face collaboration is what we are. It's a human nature. We are beings of interaction, and if we get cooped up for too long, we become very frustrated.
Now, pre this period of time, one of the biggest concerns is mental well-being at work. And I think it reports obviously 1 in 4 people suffer from mental illness during the course of their lives, which I get during their careers, but 1 in 3 would suffer from stress at any one time. And well-being is kind of a bigger and bigger issue. And I noticed your report also talks about 7.4 million people reporting feelings of loneliness, 57% talking of eye strain concerns, and 73% commenting about the seating. These are all how we look after people is also going to change as we go forward as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. So well-being is, and again, post-pandemic, well-being was a huge topic of conversation. It is not anything new. I think what the pandemic has done is accelerated that conversation. That whole topic around well-being. So of course, not wishing to pigeonhole, but that is well documented through various mediums that the pandemic has created those effects of loneliness. Of course, younger generations in house shares, flat shares, that can't work in an ergonomic way. They are forced to work on their bed. Or at a small kitchen table, and of course they don't then have their own individual privacy, and it's become a real challenge for them. So well-being is a huge topic of conversation, and it will inform the future development of office spaces. You're quite right. I mean, in terms of mental well-being, it is one of the biggest concerns moving forward, and people are now suffering more and more, and it's becoming a less taboo topic as well. People are now openly talking about mental well-being, mental health, and the well-being aspect of any design of an office must be considered. But well-being, the floor of well-being, I would say, and if I can use this platform to say this, is that in our industry, in my industry in particular, to target well-being, you have to use a fixed asset. It is a bit like a smart objective. You have to focus on a fixed asset, and that asset, of course, is the office. And there are 2 leading well-being institutes that are now very common in the UK, which is the Well Building Standard and Fitwell. But it's all focused fundamentally around the office, and of course the office is very important. But well-being goes beyond that, as we know. It's about your setup at home. It's about how you feel as an individual. It's about your perhaps even down to your financial well-being as well. If an individual has concerns about paying their mortgage or their rent at the end of the month, they're not going to be a high-performing employee. They're going to have problems that they can't overcome, and they're going to be distracted in the workplace. So as employers, I do think we have a sense of duty to make sure that well-being is not just in terms of the workplace, but it is obviously you and I as individuals that we looked after beyond the 4 walls of the space of the workplace. It is beyond that. It is in our own personal lives. Do we have mentoring programs? Can we offer financial help? Not financial help, sorry, financial counselling, beg your pardon. I'm not all of a sudden a bank, but can we give guidance and advice to all of our employees, and as much as possible? That's, well-being is a huge umbrella term which covers many different facets, and I don't think we can just focus on one part of it. It is all of it as a whole.
That's fair. Now, the encouraging piece was 78% of respondents from your report would like to either work in the office or mix home and office together. So I suppose the logical question is, how do you see the working week evolve from this period of time?
So yes, I concur with that people will travel less to the space. Why do it? And again, referring back to the client I'm working with at the moment, an interview I conducted yesterday with a gentleman, and he said, I would not be encouraging my team to travel for an hour and a half, 2 hours a day on public transport to sit at a desk when they can do that same task at home. There's absolutely no logic in that, and I agree. So why do it now? The working week, I think, will pan out to 60% of the time will be spent in the workplace, so of course 3 days, and and then the remainder of the time will be blended either at client spaces or at home. It may be less. I mean, the rhetoric that if we were to believe it, but in fact, the fact that I'm finding, the data I'm finding, is suggesting that we'll be looking at a 3-day-a-week in the place. But the office will become, and I know we've briefly talked about this already, Chris, is that the office will become a purposeful space that will go there for reasons. So we won't go there just to sit at a desk to number crunch or to do our daily tasks. If we have a task we can do at home, we will do that at home. But I will come to the office for those social cues, those collaborations. I need to catch up with you today to talk about a very focused piece of work, and I'll do that face to face rather than doing it from home. But yes, I think I do concur with the fact that there'll be less time spent in the space overall.
Now, the report also notes that 62% believe that teamwork is best done in offices, which I think is understandable, isn't it? I suppose most would agree on that. I suppose the question is, teamwork's going to be in decline during the pandemic. Have we really learned this? Do you think actually we will change and create those collaboration spaces in offices?
Yes, I think there's a couple of things to talk about here, Chris. I think so yes, teamwork has declined, but I would say I think from the experience that I'm picking up on is that teamwork did decline in the early stages of the pandemic. What we were in this, pushed into this unknown, and this cavernous space of, oh my word, okay, what we can no longer, the normal was no more. So we were forced into this space where we didn't know, we were finding our feet, but through clever innovation and research, we started to find tools that enabled us to be collaborative. So via Slack, Miro, Teams, whatever it is, there is different tools out there that people have started to use to collaborate and work together. So I think teamwork has now started to increase as a result of these tools, and the teamwork decline is not as bad as perhaps we thought it was at the beginning of the pandemic, but it doesn't replace the physical interaction that we do need. So you're quite right. I think what's happened, and we haven't really talked about burnout yet, but what has happened is that we've started to find that people can't switch off. There is a now blended space between work and play, and people are still now managing their time by their diaries. So whereas if you and I were in the office, we would have a quick interaction, a quick collaboration, and we'll be able to catch up on something very quickly. Whereas if I wanted to now collaborate with you remotely, I've got to book time specifically with you at a given point. You know, we don't just call anybody anymore, which is quite interesting actually. Picking up the phone and ringing a mobile telephone, it is okay. Can we have a quick call? But we're now deferring to Teams, Zoom, other platforms to have those catch-ups. And of course, that means that we're actually going back to back in meetings, and we're spending a lot of the working day in these sessions, in these Zoom calls, and we're doing our work at the end of the day. Whereas if we were in the space, we'd be getting things done a lot quicker, we'd be more productive, and we would then be able to enjoy that difference between the work and play, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a constant conversation about Zoom, isn't it? Is how we're going to use Zoom afterwards. Because actually everyone will talk about being Zoom weary, but actually you're right. Actually, you're more likely to kind of book a Zoom call than you are to pick up the mobile and just have a general chat, because you can't see the person. But now we've got used to seeing people, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is weird how quickly that has changed. If you think about it in the last 9-10 months, in the good old days, if I go back 10 months, we would pick up the telephone and say, Chris, how are you? You got 5 minutes? And you'd have a chat on the telephone. Now the default is, let's book a Zoom call, let's book a Teams chat, because the expectation is that I can now see you. But by doing that, of course, we are booking a moment in time in our diaries, and then we are then searching for a time that we can catch up, rather than just having that spontaneous telephone call or interaction.
It's interesting. There used to, before, if you go back last year, as research came out saying that 40% of your day is spent in meetings. I suspect that's going to increase, isn't it?
God, absolutely. If you did that straw poll now, I think you'll find that 90% of your time is actually spent in meetings. And when are we doing our work? We're now doing our work post 5 o'clock. And this is the whole burnout topic as well, that people are now working way beyond the normal core hours of work, and we don't have that ability to switch off, because we are now working. I'm in my study. I know you're obviously in yours as well. And it's so easy now for me to sit here and continue to work, or pop in late at night, pop in at the weekend, because you're at work. It is now a blended place. And the common thing that we're hearing, of course, is that there is this burnout and there is this stress that is manifesting as a result of continued working from home, because people don't have that ability to naturally to shut off and shut down. And it's not sustainable, I would say, in the long term. And this is going back to that topic at the front of the top end of our meeting, is what does the office look like? The office will stay. It won't die, and these are the reasons that a client should want a space, to create this breakout, this safe environment, this well-being, this office that creates all of these interactions and activities that people are yearning for at the moment.
Our argument is that actually support services are going to be invested in, because you want people to spend time drinking coffee or spending time having a meal with somebody, doing that informal piece, because otherwise everyone's talking about that fall in productivity. I know your report talks about the concern over productivity, but actually you need face-to-face contact, you need that informal communication to make either an experience and actually give people refreshed.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds a bit of a cliche, and obviously we are here with Anthony from obviously his business is coffee, but coffee is liquid gold, and it is probably the most important topic of conversation within offices. People want good coffee, and the days of opening a can of or a jar of not Nesquik, that's chocolate, isn't it? But
it'd be a bit different.
Yeah, gold blend, whatever it is. But yeah, coffee is fundamentally important in the office environment, to create a heart space, a breakout environment where people can just relax, catch up, chill. And this is why the coffee shops of not just of London, across the globe, have been so successful. They've offered these safe places where people just decant to chat, to collaborate, to catch up, business conversation through to personal conversation. They are a meeting place, and we want to replicate that in the space as well.
Oh, interesting. Now, one thing which made me smile a bit slightly cynically in the report was 89% believe the development of others contributed to your own job satisfaction and also that of the organization. And yet there's been a constant debate this period of time about how that budget's been cut, and actually people haven't been developed enough, which is the reason why so many millennials have struggled to break through to senior positions, as has happened in previous times. That's also one of the changes, isn't it? To me, one of the things that comes across in the report is there seems to be a difference between what my generation view life as still, and how millennials and Gen Z view life. And that's still got to be bridged. And the office is actually quite a key piece in that, isn't it?
Oh, exactly, Chris. I think if you think of the office, for me is all of the good things we've talked about so far, but it is a learning hub. How do we share the knowledge of the organization? How do we pass it on to the next generation of leader? And that can't be done remotely. It is very difficult to share knowledge and to develop on a remote. You can do it, of course. There'll be people perhaps listening that will be throwing bread at the computer screen now, saying, "No, Leeson, you're wrong." I do accept, yes, of course, you can do some of it remotely, but a lot of your learnings, interactions are done through these ad hoc spaces, these ad hoc meetings, these collaborations, and that is done in the office. So you're overhearing comment, you're overhearing telephone conversations, and that is your whole L&D is done in the space. And if we're looking to create that next generation of leader, the next talent individual, the talent pool we want to develop to take over the ownership of the business in the years to come, will be done in the space. We need to develop those individuals, and the office will by default have to become a learning facility, a faculty, if you will, to create this space.
That's quite exciting, though, isn't it? Well,
Oh,
Chris, what do you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the problem that we will have, though, Chris, is that the box is always only over so big. So the box being the office, and all of a sudden we want to put quite a lot into it. So we want to have an amphitheatre for our town halls. We want to have an L&D space. We want to have these different spaces for interaction and collaboration. We want a coffee environment. And one of the challenges I always say to clients is to create space, you need space. And all of a sudden your footprint might actually be a little bit bigger than perhaps you wanted to. So we're looking to create a a members club environment, if you like, with all these different facilities and environments that people can use. We may be sometimes trying to create something we'll have to give at some point. And what is important? What is the purpose of the space? What are the priorities? What do we want to get out of it? And those are the big ticket conversations and questions we need to ask everybody. What do we want the office to be? What is the purpose of the space? What does it mean to you? What are we trying to create out of it? And what is the long-term vision, and to making sure that that is aligned with the strategy of the business.
Will people invest in it as well? Will companies actually invest in it?
Yeah, and exactly. It is an asset. It is a cost to the business, but it is an important asset nonetheless. And I do genuinely believe that companies will continue to invest in the office space for the future.
The report also notes that 92% of Londoners believe the office plays a key role in their development. I suppose my question is, and this has been one of the gaps, hasn't it? Those living in London and working in London who live in small flats want to get back to offices because that's really important to them. Those living outside London probably don't want to do the commute and are less keen to come back. It is one of the kind of conflicts we've got to bridge as well, isn't it?
It is, yes. You're quite right. I think that proves its own challenge, in as much as that what we're finding from the report and the data we're getting so far is that there's an age, not imbalance, but there's a tipping point, shall we say, in terms of the when people start to migrate out of London, perhaps then get their own space, and all of the facilities that come with age. Having your own environment, you come out of London, you want to, I don't want to say take your foot off the gas necessarily, but I think when you get to my age, you have the facility at home perhaps, and you can actually work effectively. But if you are younger, in terms of those younger generations, when you are in flat shares, of course it becomes increasingly difficult, like we talked about earlier on in this session. So they, of course, will want to go back to the space because they just don't have the facility, and that's I don't have an answer to that topic, or in fact that point really, Chris, because it is as we progress through our age, our expectations, our lifestyles change, and we develop, our careers develop, which of course brings other trimmings with it. So we will need to consider that in terms of the future space that we are accommodating in the environment for perhaps that younger generation to not only learn, but they do have the spaces they can come into because they perhaps don't have the facility at home. But that does come under that umbrella term of well-being as well.
Well, in a couple of minutes, I want to bring obviously Cemel into the conversation, talk about sustainability. So perhaps we can cover that at the same time. Listen, get your views, because sustainability is going to become a bigger issue, I'm sure, because younger generations really want to see real commitment.
Absolutely. Yes.
In a minute, Cemel, I'll bring you back in a second. Sorry.
I was happy for Cemel to take over then. I was about to carry.
Don't worry, I still have a couple more questions. But I suppose the quick one here is, one of the big discussions is office locations are going to change. I mean, as we went for the summer, everyone was saying Canary Wharf is dead. People aren't going to go back to offices. Everyone's going to change the footprint of offices. But actually what you're saying is actually we need the space still. And actually, if anything, we may need more space. But will offices change location, or are we just going to change layouts?
It's going to change layouts, Chris. Yeah. So we won't. I mean, London will still become the southern hub. Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, Edinburgh, and of course all those other spaces across the UK. But we won't change location. But the office space will change. What we may find is that as we progress through the next year, 2 years, if office occupancy is lower and companies are seeing that the users are working effectively remotely, there is not a need for the amount of space they have today. They may well downsize slightly, but we'll still have these spaces. These spaces will exist, and they will still exist within the key locations that they operate, and that won't change.
That's interesting. Final question, more personal. What have you learned from this period of time? What's been your biggest learning?
How quickly we've adapted. So in this great unknown, this cavernous space that we're forced into, this big social experiment that we started in March, has been how quickly we've all adapted to it. And the positive thing that I can take away from COVID, I mean, it's been obviously a terrible time. It's been a terrible disease, which has impacted so many. the good thing, if we could take any good from it, is that it's accelerated our behavioral contract with workplace and expectations as well. So we've quickly adapted to remote working. We've proven that it works, and we've been very stoic in the way that we've done it, and that's been the most impressive thing, is that as humans we have adapted incredibly well, and through this process of change, you know, we don't embrace change necessarily well, and we're always resistant to it. But here we've been forced to change, and we've all thought, actually, do you know what? It's okay. It's not as bad as we expected. So that is what my biggest takeaway. That's what I've learned.
Very fascinating. Cemel, can I bring you in at this point?
You absolutely can.
Lovely to see you.
There we go, Chris. Hi. Good morning.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly.
Lisa, if you're okay, I'd like to stick around, because actually I want to talk about sustainability, which is obviously a key issue. Because I think one of the big things that everyone research tells us about from Generation Z and millennials is they want to see greater commitment to sustainability in offices. And I think we saw that at the polls at the very beginning, and also see stronger value propositions in terms of how companies act. Cemel, are you seeing that yourself? Out of interest in this dialogue you're having?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it kind of breaks down into two different types of clients that we have. One being the kind of tech organizations, whether it's the large kind of Googles, Amazons, Facebooks, where they have already been focusing on sustainability for the last 2 or 3 years and really focused on social enterprises, doing good, but trying to match the purpose, the vision and values of their employees. And really, they've already accelerated that over the last 2 or 3 years. And now we're starting to see a lot of our traditional white collar sites, whether it's law firms, banking and financial services, that, you know, have really started to see how they can integrate social business and social enterprise to try and match and create an experience for Gen Zs and millennials and potential new employees that they're going to be employing in the future. And I think that's a really important point, because as Leeson said, we want to have purposeful space. We want to have an experience for our employees to come back to. And that's why we've seen a real kind of uptick in the amount of corporate offices really trying to create that experience and bring in organizations which are matching those purpose, vision and values of their employees.
And have you seen a change in the narrative during this period of time?
I mean, we said at the beginning of the year that before we even thought about coronavirus, that this was going to be a decade of action. And it's only just sped up due to coronavirus. We saw during the initial lockdown that people were clapping the NHS every Thursday. We saw a huge amount of people trying to support local businesses, community businesses doing good, and we've also seen many consumers buying more social enterprise products at home, and that's just been sped up into the office. You know, it's about trying to offer a service where people are coming into a space that they feel familiar with, but also have a sense of community and a sense of culture, like Leeson said. And I think by bringing the external community in through social enterprise into your office, that's how you can speed that up and accelerate that.
I mean, that's the change, isn't it? The social enterprise companies and offices almost got to embrace social enterprise now, or social sustainability now, haven't they? As well as environmental. Is that fair?
It is, Chris. I mean, it is incredibly important that people start to think about the environment, sustainability, well-being, as we've talked about. It is. I was reading an article recently where it's becoming the single most important topic of younger generation, Gen Z, and millennials, that they will now start to look at employers and job specs, depending on and rating those individuals depending on that corporation's social responsibility and what they look at. So it is a critical importance at the moment.
And just to add to that, Leeson, sorry, Chris,
No,
that
please,
the recent Deloitte study said that not just will they look at future employers, but they will leave current employers. 52% will leave within 2 years. 70% odd, I can't remember the exact figure, will leave within 4 years if the company they're working for are not matching their purpose, vision, and values. And with obviously Gen Z's now accounting for 40% of the world's consumers. It just really shows how important it is to kind of look at that, not just from a social enterprise, but also an environmental focus, looking at carbon footprint, carbon neutral suppliers into supply chains, and you know, if it can offer a solution to an organization that matches those values but also kind of does good for the world at the same time, then it should be a no-brainer.
I was interested, we were talking the other day, I was interested about that because you're saying that lots of people talk to you about the carbon footprint. Do you want to expand a bit about that?
Absolutely. So I think, you know, whether looking at social enterprises, you're focusing on social challenges, whether it's, you know, people with mental health issues, homelessness. There's organizations that support villages in Africa, people with autism, you know, so that's very much socially focused and quite emotive based on a company's own kind of values. But the thing that always cuts through and is going to be here for the next 40, 50 years, rightfully, is focusing on carbon emissions, carbon neutral products. And we're seeing such a huge amount of organizations in the last year doing exactly the same thing. We actually launched a new product during lockdown called Serious Tissues, which plants a tree for every toilet roll a corporate purchases, and, you know, converting the profit that is generated into carbon credits, which the company can purchase. We just had a meeting with WeWork where just by them purchasing toilet paper from the organization, they can offset every single one of their members or employees' carbon emissions per year, and it doesn't cost them a single penny more. They're just purchasing a new product. And I think those win-win solutions, looking at carbon footprint, carbon emissions, are going to be here to stay. And I think that's something that we've been absolutely inundated by companies coming to us and asking whether or not we have products that are carbon neutral and focus on those areas.
Does it surprise you? Because obviously when people come to talk to you, normally it's about the homeless and how do we support, obviously, bringing the homeless into becoming, you know, in employment and come and train them as baristas. Does it surprise you you've also got to deal with the environmental piece as well at the same time?
It's a really positive surprise. And I think previous to that, we were always being asked about price, quality and convenience. You know, going back to what Leeson said about coffee and the importance of coffee, as long as we were able to match the quality of a product, the price and the convenience to purchase, then it should have been a no-brainer to continue supporting people at the same time. But now it's seeming as though it's not just the price, quality and convenience, it's also looking at carbon emissions, carbon neutrality. And that's something that we've really speedily adopted so we can be ahead of that curve. And it seems to be a lot of the large San Franciscan tech companies that are asking us, because they see those challenges in the US, and they are kind of already ahead of that curve and asking us to kind of what products we have.
I was going to ask that. Is the driver about employees? Because a lot of the driver for change, being a cynic, has come from employee retention, because you know you've got to be looking that you're doing this kind of work to retain the employees. Because going back to that Deloitte report, obviously it talks about the lack of trust, and actually to build trust, you've got to show action. But actually you're saying it's also driven by US influence coming to the UK. Is that fair?
I agree. And I think 2 or 3 years ago, that would be correct, where it's about driving new talent to match those vision and values, to kind of appeal to those values. But now those employees that you were attracting 2 years ago are now the people making decisions in organizations. So those individuals are a lot younger, they're focused naturally on sustainability. So I don't think it's just about matching the company's vision or the or doing a tick box exercise, or, you know, writing a nice little piece report in a shareholder statement. It's genuinely coming from the intrinsic values of the people that are in procurement, in facilities management, looking at supply chains. And it's not about making somebody else happy. It's about making the majority of employees that are working in the organization happy, because, you know, that's who's purchasing the products.
Now, Lisa, that's music to many people's ears. There's a real change in how people are viewing these issues.
Of course it is, Chris. I mean, it's we can build on that, can't we? We can build on the momentum that we have at the moment. That people are looking to change the way we move forward. We can only take the positives from it. That's exactly where we're going. We want to embrace that change moving forward.
Well, I think the point I'm trying to get to is that people have always been very cynical about procurement. Often, that procurement's really about price and it's about cost, and everything else is a bit thing. Now that there seems to be a change when actually it's not just about cost now. It is about the quality of the product and what actual actions it leads to as well. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'll answer that first, Chris, and then we can go
Sorry.
to that. So that's all right, no problem. Yeah, you're right. I think you're quite right. I mean, procurement teams in the past have always been I suppose challenging. They're focused on return on value, and of course trying to get every for as good a product as they possibly can for as low as they can. And sometimes that has been blinded by the quality of the product. So their focus has perhaps been wrong, is that the right word? But now with this change in emphasis, where quality is being driven through and people are expecting quality, goes right back to what we were talking about in the experience. It is defined by experience, and if you have a bad experience, if you have bad coffee or bad product, then you won't drink it again. That's a given. So I think there is a pressure on all facilities teams, departments, water procurement departments, that the quality is a driver, and we need to focus on that.
Perfect. Cemel?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's such a refreshing experience to see. Okay, I'm going to overly generalize here, but let's say dinosaurs in a procurement department who have been told that they need to start focusing on sustainability and social enterprise. And as soon as they hear that, the first thing they think about is about, the challenge to bottom lines and quality, etc. And it's so refreshing for them to open up and understand the opportunity and the ability to kind of change their working day to being less about the bottom line and more about the opportunity of doing good for the world. And one person told me the other day how excited he was to go home and speak to his children about the impact he was doing just by choosing what products to purchase. And it's such a lovely situation to see that change in energy of people to really embrace environmentally focused, socially minded products and socially minded products into supply chains, and what good it can do for themselves and also the companies that they work for. It's incredibly exciting to see that for the future of our workplace.
No, I agree. This is exciting. Now, one of the other things we talked about the other day was about price. And actually, obviously, price is always going to be key when they're buying a cup of coffee, and how you work very hard to make sure that people understand that actually you do it at the same price. Is that fair? In terms of
Chris,
price, sorry, can you hear me?
Sorry, the line broke up there. Could you tell us that again?
Absolutely. One of the other things we discussed the other day was about creating the same price so that you can operate at the same price, because people often think you're going to be more expensive, but actually you create that win-win scenario and you get that message across. Absolutely.
And I think there comes a point after a change piece 5 years in where you're being told that we really want to help the homeless, we really want to help the environment, help people into kind of employment, but the biggest challenge is we don't want to spend any more money, or we don't have any budget to afford those additional kind of impact areas, and then you have to adapt, and it's up to the social enterprise and the social business or the environmental focused business to adapt to make sure that the price, the quality and the convenience is as at least good as the competition. And then what we're offering as a organization is a bonus. The social impact, the environmental impact is just a bonus. And I think the more companies embrace social and environmentally focused organizations, the more economies of scale will allow those prices to come down, and then social products will become mainstream in the workplace. And that's already happening with us within the last kind of, I'd say 3 years into the organization. Let's say for Virgin Atlantic, when replacing Virgin Atlantic's coffee suppliers, we were 25% cheaper than what they were using before. The same with organizations like David Lloyd Gyms. We won a contract with the NHS, which was a £4 million contract. We've tendered for another contract in January with the NHS for all trusts, which is £15 million. And I can guarantee you we will be at least 10-15% cheaper on price. So you have to be at least as good in those core fundamental areas to compete. And we just see the social area as a huge win-win bonus that takes us over the line.
Interesting. How has this period influenced you and impacted on change, please? So
I would say at the beginning of lockdown, we saw a huge increase in organizations supporting charities. Right at the beginning, people wanted to do good, they wanted to help communities, and they were giving money to charities. As soon as we started to see talk in the media around the furlough period ending, job insecurity, and general market instability, you started to see a drop in expenditure towards charities, but because people were trying to save their disposable income, but then they started to spend that money on social enterprises because it meant that they could continue with the same expenditure that they had, buying a coffee in our case, but they could still do good by buying from a social enterprise rather than just donating the money to a charity. So that's why for social businesses, and we've got 4 within our group, we've just seen it absolutely kind of accelerate. I mean, where we expected to be perhaps within 2023, 24, we're experiencing that now, and we have seen parts of our business drop by 95%. You know, we do sell a lot into banking and financial and legal industries, and that's dropped quite significantly, but other areas have really kind of increased.
Okay, and what lessons do you think have come from this period?
I think going back to Leeson's point around being able to adapt and having strong fundamentals, you know, it's being able to understand that problems are going to happen around the corner, and as long as you have those really strong foundations and you are looking and planning for 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future, then you can kind of weather that storm. And really, and all coronavirus has really done, from a business perspective, especially for us, is it's not changed much that wasn't already going to happen in the future. So as long as we were planning for that future and we're ready for it, then it's just a case of delivering on those kind of those future expectations.
It's still, yeah, to me, it's also created a reset where people had to go back to core values. Isn't that fair, Leeson?
It is, Chris. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I think because to pick up on Cemel's point, I think you're right. It's everything that we had we've been experiencing is probably we would have done anyway in time. What coronavirus has done is it's we've gone from a 5 mile an hour plod, and we've been traveling now at sort of 70, 80 miles an hour. So yeah, I concur 100% with what's just been said.
But actually, there's a lot from both what you're saying. There's a very exciting, positive landscape potentially to come out the other end of this. It's not going to be easy, I accept. I'm not going to pretend it's all sweetness and light. But actually, there's lots of good to come out of this.
Yeah, well, especially if we're seeing organisations really prioritising those social and environmental areas, and trying to create an experience for their employees to come back to. We've had quite a few organisations say, you know, we don't want people to come back to the same environment, see the same experience. Coming back and creating an exciting, energetic, optimistic, purposeful experience for them is going to keep them coming back, and it's you know, it keeps people having to adapt. And I think we mentioned in our kind of pre-call the other day that I read a really interesting article in the Financial Times about the future of the high street, and there were some comments being made that the high street just needs to die. It needs to die and re-evolve and readapt, and the way it does that is by creating an experience and an opportunity for consumers to have something new and something exciting and innovative. So that's why organizations should be looking internationally to what's happening in other markets, but also looking at what was going to happen in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years and bring it in now to create that exciting experience for their employees.
And for you, Cemel, you've obviously got a huge amount of accolades, obviously on the success curve. How do you review the last few years of how, since you set up Change Please and where it's going now?
Well, I mean, the answer coronavirus was, incredibly positive. We had a wonderful growth period. We really tapped into, actually, another study from Harvard was speaking about what makes businesses successful. Looking at all different variables and areas, whether it's the idea, the product, the finance behind it, the team, and the number one area that they concluded made an organization or startup successful was timing. And from our perspective, we've been going for 5 years, and this is absolutely the right time, as we've been saying, to kind of really focus on the next 10 years, 20 years, that decade of action, looking for the future, looking at what world we want to live in, and having the responsibility of large organizations to make the choices that can make the world a better place will only attract new talent, keep existing employees, create a halo effect around organizations, but also fundamentally make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that from not just private companies, but the government are really getting behind that as well. You're looking at the government with their green grants. They've just announced a new PPN, a public procurement notice, on the 22nd of September, which says that any public or government contract will automatically have a 10% accounted for rating in a contract if they use or are a VCSE, so a voluntary charity social enterprise. That's unheard of, and the government are making commitments around banning diesel or non-electric vehicles in the next 10, 15 years, whenever that is due. And all of those announcements are a great representation of what future we're going to be living in. And I think companies embracing that now will benefit on all fronts, from, as I mentioned, keeping talent, winning new talent, and creating the world a better place.
Leeson, your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think the world a better place. It's interesting that whenever I speak to clients, there is a common thread, a thread across all facets of an organisation, that people will genuinely want to make a difference. And if you have done something that makes a difference, whether it is from a social environmental impact point of view, or learning and development, teaching, if you can go home, sit there and tell your wife, your loved one, your partner that you've made a difference, it's a warm, glowing feeling, isn't it? You feel you've done something, and I think that's what we all crave for, is that if we can make a genuine difference, then we've done a good job.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Lauren, can I bring you in? I think you've got a question as well.
Oh, sorry. Yes, absolutely. It was actually Mary Dugan asked a question. And Mary wanted to know from both of you, sort of, what are your thoughts around businesses reducing office space and sourcing a more working from philosophy to offer some of these more social responsible products and services that you've been discussing at the moment more widely?
Well, I think it's bound to happen. What percentage it happens and people work more from home, Leeson's probably a better expert to answer that. But for sure, people are going to work more from home. We're seeing organizations where they had expenditure focused on providing, let's say, free coffee to their employees who would normally come into work. They're now using that disposable or that expenditure to then send coffee and packages and hampers to their employees working from home. And I think all those little touches help to continue engaging employees. And it's just about adapting. We have to forget about where the office was a year ago, in my opinion, and really learn where we're going to be from people like Leeson, and really start adapting to those changes quickly, and doing it positively, creating an exciting environment for people to come back to when they want to come back to, and also encourage our employees to make the choices to work from home if that's what they prefer. But it's a really incredible opportunity for us, and we're seeing organizations like AstraZeneca that we work with, and a lot of the tech companies, as I said, really embracing the situation and focusing on how they can make it a positive situation, rather than worrying about what used to happen and how we can get back to that.
And I suppose, Leeson, for you, are any of your clients looking at how they look after their staff when they are doing that 2 to 3 days at home and not in the office?
That's a good point, Lauren. And I think it's something that is currently being overlooked, because we've been forced into this social pandemic, the social experiment through the pandemic. We have sort of lost sight of the fact that as a business and as an employer, we have a duty of care. And if we do change our employees' contracts to work from home, of course, the duty of care extends to the home workplace. So employees will have to have the right facilities. They'll have to have a DSE, digital screen equipment assessment done at home to make sure ergonomically they're set up as well in the right way. So all of this stuff is fundamentally important, but we're sort of turning a bit of a blind eye to it at the moment because we've been forced into it. But the long term, and the more businesses, of course, are promoting this continued work from home policy, then it is going to be down to each HR team, people and talent, and business owners and business leaders to make sure that users, and I say clients because they are the business clients really, that they're looked after. in the home. So that it doesn't just extend to the ergonomic, but everything you expect in the office should then be replicated at home as well. So if that is a coffee, if it's packages being sent to home, then these are things we're going to be look to need to be doing in the long term.
I'm conscious of time. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time. And can we bring in Anthony, please? Shall we bring in Anthony at this point?
Sure.
From Liquid Line?
Yes. There he is.
Good morning.
Hi, great to see you. Hope you're well. Sorry.
Thank you.
That was great what they had to say, wasn't it, Anthony?
It's phenomenal. My head's quite honestly spinning with facts, figures, and exciting things for 21, yeah.
And coffee's obviously going to play a crucial role, as Cemel was saying, and obviously experience, as Leeson was saying too. How do you see everything yourself?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been listening to the conversation with great interest, I have to say, and I'm not sure if I should share with the audience how much I've had to pay Cemel and Leeson to mention coffee speeches, but no, but thank you. Clearly, I think the reality is that nobody is arguing that the office is going to look different. The argument is that the office is still very much alive, and listening to Leeson and what he was saying about the office becoming the new high street, that's what I absolutely believe. The office is going to look different, but it's going to be the go-to destination. And I think coffee, aside from everything else, is going to form a real fundamental part of that. Clearly, coffee for us, as I look back over the last 6-10 years in the whole coffee industry, and how it's grown just exponentially year on year, and how the quality of coffee has evolved, going back to the Nescafe. You know, you look back and clearly people are becoming more aware about what they're drinking. They're getting more interested in going to their favorite coffee shop, to using their favorite barista. All of these things is showing that coffee has such an important place.
Oh, look, and actually coffee, to be fair, is the thing I think most people talked about. They missed most. It was a good cup of coffee when they're in lockdown. It's interesting. I think people want to get back to the office just for the coffee, but it's going to, creating that social interaction is going to be crucial as we go forward anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the word allure. Clearly, a great cup of coffee is one of these allure factors that hopefully we can use as we move forward into 2021. The other thing I like as well, listening to Cemel, clearly lots of phrases prefixed with the word social, not followed by distance. For me, that's just amazing. So that's going to have a big part in what we're doing as well. So this social responsibility, I think, has been drowned out by this whole COVID noise. And as we move into 2021, for us at Liquid Line, the whole social responsibility message is absolutely something that we're going to pick back up again with great vigor, because I feel that it's kind of really taken a back seat as we've gone through this year, and it's going to be at the forefront, certainly, of what we're doing as we move into the new year.
And what kind of feedback are you getting from clients as well?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one, Chris, because as you well know, I'm a passionate believer that the office will return, and I think, quite honestly, the office will be populated more than we believe. Only this morning I was listening to a Bloomberg interview with some senior members there, between two Bloomberg members, and the interesting thing was that one of them was saying, I can't work from home, it doesn't work for me, I'm a social person, I'm in I share space with other guys, and quite honestly, you know, working in that environment, just, it doesn't work for me. And there's going to be a lot of people that are in that same situation. But on the flip side, the other gentleman that was on the interview, he was very much the opposite. So it was very interesting listening to them, the two of them, kind of debating between the two of them as to what is going to happen. But what we're actually seeing happening on the ground is that people are investing for next year. So to come back to my earlier point, yes, nobody is debating that the office is going to look different, but it's still very much going to come back. So for us, you know, we've seen, particularly in the city, we've seen a lot of real estate that's clearly very low population figures. But one of the things that came out of this Bloomberg interview was the fact that if you actually look at the value of real estate, it's pretty much flatlined during the whole of this year. So there's been no change to that. So the real estate market in London alone is a multi-billion-pound market. So there's got to be a significant shift there if the office isn't going to return, or even indeed if it's going to change massively, which we haven't seen. So I really do feel that probably within the next 6-12 months, I was really interested in the poll at the beginning of this to show that at the end of Q2, everything's going to be back to normal. And I kind of did, because I was off camera, I did a silent jump for joy, because that's what I believe. I think the weather will turn in March. We'll start to get a bit of warmth, and the vaccine will hopefully be well on the way to being rolled out. I really do feel that the next year is going to be good.
And just a quick question, there's another one. I mean, we're very aware that this period of time has been difficult for a lot of people, and a lot of people have lost their jobs. But do you think, both of you, Leeson and Anthony, that businesses investing in technology, investing in offices, do you think that's going to give people hope that things will change and that there is a brighter future ahead? Anthony, you first. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. I do, is the honest answer. And I think, as I said, the phrase that's been used as the office as a go-to destination is going to be used differently. So clearly cramming desks as an area to come and crunch numbers, to use Leeson's expression, that's not what it's going to be used for. And really, we were seeing that pre-COVID anyway. We were seeing companies investing in HQs in central London as great places to go. So they were attracting, yes, top talent, but there was also a hidden message was to get people to go to the office, as visiting a lot of these office spaces in London, I was seeing larger breakout areas, larger collaborative spaces, and the actual numbers of desks were already shrinking. So really all COVID's done is fast-tracked us into what the future is going to look like anyway. Lisa, I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, Anthony, I think, and I can see the question here that's been posed, and it's a very topical point. 2020 has been a terrible year for I think most. It's been, people have unfortunately lost their jobs, and companies have cut back. And what I would say to that, and the actual question is, how do we keep people motivated? I would say that in March and April, we had a very foggy windscreen. We had no idea what was going on. And of course, there were some companies that panicked and made decisions backed on sheer panic, because they didn't have visibility of what the future would hold. But as we progressed through this year, and it sounds massively cliched, and I don't mean it to be, but that foggy windscreen has started to clear, and we can now see what the future now holds. So we've got through the worst of the pandemic. Of course, it doesn't take long to open up our news streams, and we can see the excitement that exists now around that. We are administering the antidote, the drug, and of course it's just one of 3 or 4 that are being developed. So I think, you know, we can see in a very short space of time that there is an end. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And in all industry, we're seeing those positive glimmers that we will get back to. I don't think we get back to a normal. It's the new abnormal, but it's going to be different. But I think for all those people that have had a tough time in 2020, 2021, there's going to be no immediate magic wand that will suddenly get business and the economy back to where it was. But I think we can clearly see now what it is that's in front of us, how we can deal with it, and in time, we will see, I think, towards the back end of 21 being a much more profitable, positive place where we all want to be, and that new abnormal will start to develop.
Very good. I want to say I'm conscious of time. Anthony, you've been a great supporter of the work we've been doing, and I'm really grateful for that. Would you like to say some final words as we come towards the close of the webinar?
No, really only to just look, Cemel, and the relationship that we have with him with Change Please. I can only back up really everything that he's saying. I think his initiative is certainly one of the best that I've seen out there in a long time, because of the very reasons that he said, and that is that there is no additional cost to the end client, and that is absolutely fundamental, because that's so often what we see as a business is all of these great initiatives coming out around green and sustainability and environmental and all of these great initiatives that are coming forward, but more often than not they cost 10, 20, 30% more than what we've been used to. And that's right across the spectrum. So that might be packaging, that might be recyclable products in terms of cups, plates, this kind of thing. So for this Change Please coffee, which, as I say, we've partnered with Cemel now, for it to have the corporate social responsibility piece, but in addition to that, the carbon neutral is, and without paying more per kilo, is absolutely phenomenal. So I think, look, the work he's doing is absolutely fantastic. We completely 100% endorse it, and I think we have a great future together.
Thank you, Anthony. And look, Leeson, thank you very much for your time today as well. And Anthony, he's been great as well, hasn't he? I mean, I think it's a positive message going out, isn't it, about what we can get out of this period?
Absolutely. And look, you know, I've been likewise, as Leeson will know, we've worked with Peldon for many years now, and clearly they have great leadership. As a business, they've been working right the way through COVID in a safe way. But I really do feel that that's as a result of their positive leadership, and clearly their clients buy into that. And look, I think, Leeson, you've, for me, I've read your report in depth, but even today there's still fresh stuff coming out. So I can only say thank you for your time today. Absolutely.
Thank you. Lauren, any final words?
Well, we did want to end our last webinar of the year on a positive note. And I think over this 10-month period with the conferences and webinars we've had, that hasn't always been possible just by the nature of the beast. So I do think that this one is lining us up quite nicely for the next year. And it is great that it is possible to make good decisions. It is possible to create positive change, and you don't have to do anything, you know, exceptional or anything costly to do it. It's just changing mindsets, and with the change we've experienced, I think that's we were really geared up to change mindsets and change behaviors. So I do think, and I thank you both, it's been a great discussion and ended positively. We always have a giggle with Anthony that he's been positive from word go this entire year, and I absolutely agree. We're all looking forward to 2021 and the positivity and the change that brings as well. So 100%. I think I hope we achieved our positive end to the year.
Thank you. Well, look, thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Leeson. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for joining us today. We'll be releasing this recording a bit later on today as well, and we look forward to seeing you in the very near future. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.